What's up, folks? Got another tackle tip video for you here. Today we're going to be talking about line types. I get asked all the time. You've got mono, you've got braid, you've got fluorocarbon, you've got polymers that are kind of in between copolys. What do I use? Well, today we're going to focus on the three main types. We're going to be talking about fluorocarbon, we're going to be talking about braid, and we're going to be talking about monofilament line. And we're going to talk about ultimately when do you use those applications. So if you're trying to figure that out, stay tuned. This video is for you. That's right, Berkeley trilane monofilament. Monofilament. Why am I using monofilament today? We've got a lot of options out there, whether that's braided lines or whether that's fluorocarbon lines or whether that's a copolymer, which is a mix of fluorocarbon and monofilament. Why am I ultimately using monofilament line if I have all these other things? Well, for me, it's pretty simple. If I want something with some stretch to it, or if I want something that floats, monofilament's going to be my deal. Why am I going to need those things? Well, there's going to be a lot of times, especially this time of year, where you're going to be fishing up pretty shallow. There's going to be baits that you're going to want to keep off the bottom. You're going to want to keep them kind of more mid-water column. You're going to want to keep them out of vegetation. You're going to want to keep them from going down for whatever reason. And monofilaments are going to really help you do that. Monofilament, because it floats naturally, your bait's going to naturally stay up more in the water column. It'll make a lot of baits rise up. So if that's not what you want, monofilament's not what you need for that application. But if you want that bait to stay up in the water column, it's perfect. Another thing that it's really good for is when you're fishing topwaters and you want to pair that as a leader onto braid, especially for clear water applications. You know, there's gonna be a lot of times when you're fishing super clear water, you'll see that the fish just really don't want to commit to your bait. They can see the line kissing the water, and when they can see that color of that braid, that's just an additional thing that they don't like. So they can already see the tension, the surface tension being broke by the line, but you add that color in there and that'll really shy away a really smart fish, especially an old seasoned bass. So if you put a little bit of monofilament leader on there, it's going to add a clear aspect to it. They may see the line kissing, but honestly, they're not really paying as much attention to it unless they can see the opaqueness of that line. That's my opinion. And so it's going to get you some more bites. So you can use it for stealth. You can use it for the floating factor. And before my GoPro rudely cut off on me there, I was going to say you can use it for the floating aspect of it, you can use it for the clearness aspect of it, or you can use it for the stretch aspect of it, because ultimately you're going to get some stretch on that monofilament line. So hope that helps y'all out when using monofilament. That's right, fluorocarbon. Seeger fluorocarbon specifically, if it's this guy. I know there's a lot of other manufacturers out there. People talk a lot about different manufacturers of fluorocarbon and whether it's the better one. You know, ultimately, I would say that Seeger meets all of your matches and it does everything that you're going to need it to do. So aside from brands, you know, let's talk about why you're ultimately going to use fluorocarbon versus anything else. Well, fluorocarbon is the clearest of all lines. Monofilament has got a lot of clearness to it, but one thing that monofilament will do that fluorocarbon tends to not do as much is pick up light. And that picking up the light and the shine coming off the line, really, again, a smart fish is going to see that. They're going to shy away from that bait in that area altogether because they just know it's not natural. They can see something that's just not normal there. So the clarity aspect is going to be one of the bigger reasons that you're going to want to go to fluorocarbon, but also the non-stretch factor. As I mentioned earlier, monofilament has got a ton of stretch to it. And while that can be good for certain applications, a lot of times it's not good. If you've got a lot of line out there and you go to set the hook with monofilament, you got to really set the hook to get that bait in there. A bigger bass, you're probably not even going to penetrate his mouth all the way, which is going to result in a lot of lost fish, a lot of sad days on the water. So ultimately, the non-stretch aspect is going to let you get better hook sets. The clearness aspect is going to get you more bites. and it's just a very tough line. It's very abrasion resistant. As compared to a monofilament, I'd say it's at least twice as abrasion resistant. And when it gets beat up, it still holds its integrity. You can feel the line will be all beat up, but you'd still just landed a really nice fish. And you're thinking, how did I boat flip that fish? And that line's all beat up. Well, it's because it's fluorocarbon. The stuff doesn't stretch. It just doesn't break as much as a factor because of that. So if you're looking for something that's stealthy, looking for something that's not going to stretch for you, it's going to be great. And then last but not least is the density of this line. It's going to keep your bait down. So if you're Texas rigging, if you're fishing crankbaits, if you're fishing swim baits and you want to keep them down, really anything you want to keep down in the water column, fluorocarbon is going to be a better option for you. It doesn't float, it actually sinks. You can take a little piece of it and throw it in some water and watch it sink straight to the bottom because it's very dense. And so that's going to help you out keeping the bait down, and that's ultimately going to be why you're going to use fluorocarbon. That's right, Power Pro Braid. If it's me, I'm going to be fishing Power Pro. That's my preferred brand. There's a lot of good brands out there, so I definitely recommend checking them out and seeing which one you prefer. Power Pro is tried and true. It's a good pricing option, but aside from brands, why the heck am I using Braid? Well, Braid is going to have the least stretch out of all of them. So we're talked about stretch across the other three lines. If you want something that has basically zero stretch, which that's Braid, that's what you're going to want to go with. Now, with no stretch, you obviously got to worry about breaks more often. So in my opinion, you got to upsize your line. A 30-pound braid is the equivalent of using more like a 10 or a 15-pound fluorocarbon from a breaking perspective. It's not saying that it's going to break at that tensile strength because obviously it's 30-pound test. But when you don't have any stretch and you have short line out, or that fish just really goes to dog you, or it gets you wrapped around a pole or any of that stuff, because you don't have any stretch, you're going to break off more often. So when you're fishing around structure, keep that in mind. You're going to want to up the size of that braid. If I'm fishing around heavy structure, I'm fishing with like 65-pound braid bare minimum, maybe even 80 if it's really, really thick, but 65 tends to cover your bases in super heavy cover. And braid is ultimately going to be another floating line. Now, it will slowly sink over time as it absorbs water, so it doesn't completely float like monofilament line does, but it does float very well on the surface for a long period of time, longer than what you'd want it to or need it to. And it's going to be really good for topwater lures. I mean, that's one of the main reasons I use braid. I will also use it when I want to feel the lure really well. So going back to that non-stretch aspect, if I want to feel the thump of, let's say, a chatterbait, swim bait tail, fishing, maybe a square bill, and I've got really, really murky water, I would still recommend using a leader. But anytime I want to really feel the thump of a bait, I would go to a braid. And it's going to ultimately help you feel the bites a lot better as well. So you're going to want to use braid anytime that you want zero stretch. The hook setting factor is bar none the best with braid of anything else. Any quick twitch of the rod is going to be very exaggerated out on the end of that line, and you're going to get a lot better hook sets because of that. But something to keep in mind about braid, we talked about abrasion resistance, where I would say fluorocarbon is the best on abrasion resistance level. Monofilament's kind of your middle tier. It's going to be pretty good. But when it comes to braid and abrasion resistance, there's just really not a good abrasion resistance there. Whether it's wood or metal or rock, it doesn't really seem to matter. It cuts pretty easily on all of it, and it frays. Which really reduces the integrity of the line, and ultimately abrasion and braid just don't go hand in hand. So if you are fishing around an area where you want to use braid, I would use a fluorocarbon leader to the braid and give myself enough leader to where whatever I'm fishing around that would be braiding that braid, it's doing it on the leader instead. So I hope that helps you out. That's ultimately why I'm using these three different lines at a high level anyway. If you have any questions about any of that, please put them in the comments. I'm happy to help out. Would really appreciate a thumbs up on this video. That helps everything trend. Same thing with making a comment on the video.